You've got to be different. I don't care you're selling tennis shoes. I don't care what it is you're selling, what your business is. You have to stand out from your competition.
Welcome to Built in Vegas, the podcast where we spotlight the stories, strategies, and resources behind the businesses that make Vegas thrive.
What's up, everybody? It's Trevin with another episode of Built in Vegas, and today I'm really excited because we have somebody who's literally building Vegas. It's incredible what he's done. It's incredible what he's built and his story. And so we're going to dive into it. So Nathan, thank you so much for coming in today. I know how busy you are and everything going on. First off, just give me a little bit of background. Like, how did you even start NDL in the first place?
Well, I grew up in Orange County, California, and my mom was a single mom. So we came to Vegas, and my grandparents finished raising my little brother and I. And I went ahead and right after 18 went into the union, the roofing union. So actually, I was a hot roofer. First big job was the first part of Caesar's Form Shops. I actually got hurt on the roof, had to go in the office, and from there I became a project manager. I never went back into the field. And in 2003, I kind of went through a divorce midlife crisis and decided that I wanted to become my own boss. So I convinced my little brother, and we went ahead and started the company. And several years later, sometimes, working with family's tough. We parted ways. He went one way, I went the other. But no, we founded in 2003. We've got about 60 employees, and we're in Nevada. We're in Arizona. We last year got licensed in Utah, and it's been an interesting roller coaster ride here in Las Vegas.
I mean, that's like incredible, right? Like it's so cool to see what you have built and where you came from. And, going back to like the beginning, if you can kind of go back there, like what was like maybe the scariest part of starting? What was something, or maybe something that you didn't know business was going to be like this?
Yeah, so actually I would like to touch on something. So I worked for an amazing family in a company called Commercial Roofers. And, I sold a bunch of work there. I kind of oversaw the re-roofing department. So after going through a divorce and all that and deciding I wanted to start my business in the end of 2003, I actually told Commercial Roofers that I was going to go ahead and start my own business and that I wanted to leave. And my brother also worked there at the same time. And they said, hey, look, you sold a whole bunch of schools and stuff. How about this? How about we help you set up the business? We help you set up the books. We help you set up OSHA. How about you just don't sell anymore, finish out these schools, and when they're done, leave, kind of get yourself started. And the funny thing about it is I will tell you that back then you didn't think that was worth anything. Now, today, moving forward, you couldn't put a price tag on that. I think when you become an entrepreneur, going out and getting the work or making things happen isn't that difficult. That's not the scary part. I think the scary part is if you don't have a very strong support group or you don't have family members that are, business people, that's probably the scariest and toughest part. I actually find myself today working with subs where I'll try to ask them questions or we'll talk about business, and I'm amazed how many people don't understand what basis is or basic accounting or profit and loss statements, WIP reports, how to forecast. To this day, that's still, I think, not in people's wheelhouse, but going out and communicating and getting the work and getting a shot to get a job to complete it, I think that's not too hard. So for me, the scariest part has actually been the back of house part. It's never been talking, getting out there, getting the work. It hasn't even been finishing the work. It's been all of the warranties, the closures, the lien releases. That has been difficult, to say the least.
Yeah, like I'm in a similar boat, right? Like, because we were talking about before, but like I've kind of like owned my own job, right? Like I never really considered it a business. Other people did, but I'm like, it's not business. I don't have employees. I don't have any of this stuff. And making that transition to trying to open up a space and like build like a legitimate business has been so hard because there's like especially in our field, there isn't like there's not a lot of companies that do what we do. They're popping up and there's more and more, but there's not like a standard. It's not like this is the format and the proven way, and this is your operating system and how you do things. And so like I've never worked anywhere. I had one job when I was like 16 or 17 at Linens and Things, folding towels, right, for like 6 weeks. I remember getting my first paycheck. I got like $6.25 an hour or whatever. And I got my first paycheck after like 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, $120 or something like that. I was like, what? I was like, quit, because I was like, this is crazy. I can do more mowing lawns than being here. But like, I've never worked for a company to see how like things work. So like, we're trying really hard now to figure out, and that's what I've been spending all my time figuring out, is like, how do we operate as a business? How do we manage a team? How do we build the right systems to lead that team properly?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when I started, there was like WordPerfect 5.1, there was Lotus 1, 2, 3, right? You accelerate 20-something years. I mean, we had bag phones, then flip phones, then you had the brick phones, and then the BlackBerry was big time, right, in 2003. Now you can do whatever you want on an iPhone, right? So I think things are different, but I think the biggest thing for me is still communicating with people. So I preach to people that get into some groups, get into some mentor groups. If you don't have a mentor, I have friends that are like part of Los Vicarios, great group of guys. They get together once a month and they support charities, but they talk about business. Get into those groups that talk about business, because I think that if you, like you said, you don't have really any employees, it's you yourself, but you're communicating with business people all day long. But for those who aren't, they're Mr. Entrepreneur or Mrs. Entrepreneur. That's all great. But try to surround yourself with people that have been successful in business. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. With my A-type personality, I never shut up. So I'm always asking a lot of questions, right? But I would think that that's really the secret to my success is I surrounded myself with great people. I will tell you that I never built a great company. The people work for me built a great company. I have amazing network of people that work for me. I have a lot of longtime employees. But yeah, good people, surround yourself with good people. And, my grandfather always preached to my little brother and I, hey, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, I don't care if you lose money, do what you said you're going to do. He always used to say, if you're working next to somebody, work harder than the person next to you. And I think that that's another good trait that I have. 21, almost 22 years later, I still work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I don't care what it is. If they need help on a roof, if they've got a problem inside a TI, if it's going to an architect or an engineer's office, I don't care. I'm happy to help any way I can. And I legitimately have the open door policy, which I think some people in my company wish that I didn't, because maybe some people use it a little too often, but I'm heavily involved.
Yeah, no, and I love that, because you're leading the company by example, right? I think sometimes entrepreneurs, the dream is like, I'm going to build this company and they don't have to do anything. And maybe they get to a certain point where they do start backing away, and then the company is going to suffer because you're not putting in that work. You're not caring. You're not showing the team that this stuff matters. And I think that's incredibly important and a great trait that you have. Along this process, what has been the hardest thing for you to like maybe overcome with, and I'm sure there's been so many parts along the journey of like, this was the hardest part at this point, but then getting to this point, because how many employees do you have currently, you said?
Around 60.
Yeah. So, I mean, probably going from 3 employees to 10 was probably the hardest thing ever. And then going for 10 now, but like, what is like maybe one thing that you've learned along this journey that was like really hard to overcome and you've kind of figured it out now?
Well, I don't know if I figured it out. I mean, I think the hardest thing really is employees, right? So construction is such an interesting career choice, right? Because you have your basic handymen, you have your subcontractors, you have your home builders, remodelers. There's a lot of things that you wouldn't think that hit you. So I'll give you, for instance, a few years ago, a friend of mine said, hey, this guy from Perini, he's been with Perini 20 years, big builder, they build all the casinos, great project manager, this guy is your guy. I interviewed him. He wanted a tremendous amount of money. And I'm like, okay, he's got to be great. He's been with Perini all these years, and and they're a great company. And then what I found out is he was a good guy, but he basically did rooms like floors 5 through 15, right? So he didn't do the plant or a parking garage or the tea in the garages or whatever. He literally did rooms. So if you wanted to know about jacuzzi tubs, showers, shower pan, waterproofing, I mean, he was your guy. But I think that what we do as a non-union general contractor, and we also self-perform, it's been the employees. So you've got to have a guy that can literally read civil plans, can do horizontal construction versus vertical. And what I'm learning is, much like in any business, everybody seems to be specialized. Either you got guys that are really good at heavy civil, ground, dirt work, underground utilities, and then you got people that are great with vertical construction, right? It's very hard to find people that are super well-rounded. And I think a lot of it is because we don't have the trades in the schools anymore. I don't know exactly how old you are, but truthfully, when I went to school, we had auto class, we had metal shop, we had wood shop, we had those things. They're not in those schools anymore. The other thing is, you know, in Europe and stuff, college is free. Here we pay a tremendous amount of money for college. Labor is to answer your question. I would love to see, you know, more trade schools, and I would love to see people, you know, getting into construction. The problem is if your dad was a carpenter, he wanted better for you, son. I don't want you to be a carpenter. Don't do the hard job I did, right? The problem is those techniques die. That trade starts to die out, and that's what we're faced with.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talk about this all the time. Actually, my nephew, we were here, you know, he lives in Kanab, a small little town, and he just wants to work. Like, he wants to work hard. He wants to get out of that small town. He wants to come to Vegas or just really anywhere. And we were talking about it. And he's like, you know, he's like trying to figure out his career path. And I was like, dude, what about the trades? Like, you can make so much money in the trades. And it's not even necessarily about money. Like, the work's so rewarding. I was like, so I was telling about NTI, right? Because it's just right there. I was like, you can literally stay at grandma and grandpa's house and walk to NTI. I was like, I know the owners of it. I might even be able to work out a deal. Like, if grandma and grandpa won't pay for it, I might be able to get you in there and I'll do videos for them. Like, we'll get you in there, because the opportunity in the trades, not only just for like the work opportunities, but then the things that you can do around your house. Like, it's such a good thing. Like, I always think about, like, I should go to NTI and just learn some of these basic things just so I can feel a little bit more like a man, because I don't feel like a man very much. I can't fix anything. I don't know how to do anything. But I do feel like there's a small push of like getting back to the trades, like I've seen on social media a little bit more. It seems like it's becoming more accepted, because I agree with you. I think for a while people were like, oh, you're a plumber? You didn't go to college? And it's like...
Yeah, so, you know, when I grew up in the roofing industry, you know, I was in the union. So we had to work all day, then we had to go to classes at night. And you went to classes where you were cutting sheet metal, or they were teaching how to use a brake, a shear, right? Make a dormer, solder sheet metal. And then on the weekends, you would do like schools, or you would do churches, or they would find the elderly and you would go re-roof their house for free. But you gave your time as a you know, apprentice until you became a journeyman. You know, I think and I don't want to knock the unions at all. I just think that they need to bring those basics back to union, non-union, because I don't feel that that's really happening like it was back in the 80s when I was doing it. But at the same time, you know, technology is great, but technology, you know, you can't watch YouTube and then go wire a house. You might get pretty far, but I just don't advise that, right? So I would love to see privateers. I'd love to see the government. I'd love to see everybody in a whole get back on with trades. I do realize that we're in an age now. Can a robot do your job? Is my job going to be closed out? Right? Maybe some parts of construction, but I don't think all of it. I think construction is something that you're going to see people get their hands dirty for years and years to come. So I'd really like to see trades get back into school, or even like you said, you know, let's get these trade schools backed, supported. Let's grow that part of it.
Yeah. I think the thing I think is cool about like the trades, or like what you get to do, is like the story of transformation. Right, like, because I got to document your guys' build with Paul, right, in Henderson, and like I loved going on that project. And like when I went there the first time, it's just giant lot of dirt. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I go in like, okay, they're digging trenches now. Okay, that's cool. And I go back again a few months later. It's like, oh, there's like a whole building here. Wait, what? Oh, bang, there's like this. And then like I was there the other day filming some stuff for some company. And I was like just looking at the place again. I was like, dude, this used to be dirt. And somebody put this together, which was you. And is that like incredibly rewarding to see these projects come up and like to literally take nothing and turn it into incredible things?
So I got a 3-step answer for you on that one. One, to this day, whenever I sell or somebody in my office sells a multi-million-dollar job, I don't know what it is. In my 50s, I still get giddy. I like the kill, right? I like getting those contracts signed. I still find it rewarding that you work so hard at getting numbers and people together, and then boom, someone signs a contract and you're off to the races. And then I'll second what you said. I love still going to the job sites I do. You know, that job was interesting because that was the first tilt up and set of hangars we did where Paul and Kenny did maintenance inside that tilt up, so we had to go ahead and put in that foam system. So if you remember, after we built that 40-something thousand square foot tilt up, there was like 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools we had to dig that are in that taxiway, and they're holding tanks if that foam ever gets released. So here we popped up all those big hangars, and then we built that tilt up, and then all of a sudden I come back and I'm like, why is there this huge swimming pool in a taxiway? All right. So, and then finally, it's just driving by. My son's like, hey, Dad, you built that. Or, hey, Dad, you built that. That probably gets me the most out of it all is I have a teenage son, and for years he's watched these things get built, and we can go by, you know, Mountain's Edge Shopping Center or, you know, Shelby America, the car place we built. We've done some tremendous projects, but it's great to see your kid point out the window and go, Dad built that. Or NDL's did that, and I do love it to this day.
That's so cool. I've only gotten to experience that a little bit because like a lot of our work we do, one, my kid's never going to see, but we do have a few billboards. We've done like some stuff with Discovery Museum, and we go to the airport pretty often. You know, my son plays hockey, and there's ads for Discovery Museum, and every time we walk by, one's like, wait, Dad, isn't this one of your photos? I'm like, yeah, it is. That's pretty cool. So that I can only imagine to be like, yep, I built that. I built that. I built that. I mean, that's crazy because you're literally changing the landscape of our city. Like you're changing the trajectory of our city. You're helping businesses and entrepreneurs fulfill their dreams and then employ people and fill those and then service people. Like I think like what you do is just so incredibly cool because you're literally changing our city around us. Do you ever think of it that way?
Yeah, you know, look, I drive around quite a bit, but there's times like I hadn't been to Lake Las Vegas, truthfully, in probably 10 years. And I got invited to go play golf at a tournament, Reflection Bay. I was blown away. I think the last time I was there was like 08, 09. They shut down the golf courses. They shut down that casino. Like, it was all shut down. That was the last time I was there. I was blown away to play golf and see all that. But to this day, I still, you know, you drive to Boulder City. If you haven't been there in a long time, you're like, wow, where did those buildings come from? So, you know, I've been here since 1988. I mean, I remember playing on the US 95 and Flamingo on the highway before it opened because that's where my grandparents lived. So we'd be running up and down and trying to get in those tractors and drive those tractors on the US 95 before it was built. So, and then, you know, Flamingo and like Rainbow, where my wife grew up, that was the end. Like, that was it. So to see that and now go anywhere from Apex, Aliante. I drove to Utah last week and I saw the Terrible Herbs gas station right there now at the Apex exit before you go to Ritchie Brothers. I'm like, when did that pop up? So yeah, I still like that. But I will tell you, I've been fortunate enough to travel because of my racing. So I've traveled all around the world for the last 10 years. And I will tell you that I still love coming home to Vegas. I think you get used to 24-hour town. I've been here since 1988. You're not going to get me to move or leave here. I love it here. And I will tell you that, you know, my wife, like we were talking about before, has a charity. And I was surprised. I didn't think that younger people really cared much about philanthropy or giving back. I am amazed to see the younger generation, the older generation, church groups, retirement groups that come in and actually help my wife's charity, and it's amazing. So Vegas is much more of a community, I think, than anybody would ever believe if you're not from here or been here a while, and I just love it here.
Yeah. No, it's true. Like I remember when I was like little, right? Like I don't know, maybe 11 or 12, because I grew up here. We moved here when I was like 2 or 3, right? So I've been here since like maybe 91 or something. And remember like going somewhere and like people are like, "Oh, you're from Vegas? Like what hotel do you live in?" Like people live there? Like no way. And even till today, like there's a lot, like because we travel so much, we meet these people. I was in Boston not too long ago, and they're like Vegas, man. Like was there like you guys live there? Like, what's there to do? I'm like, dude, I love it in Vegas. Like, I don't really see myself leaving. We might to help my son pursue his dreams, but like, we'll always have a house here. We'll never leave. I love this town, and the 24-hour stuff is great. Like, you forget it until you go out of town, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, like it's 10 o'clock. I'm kind of hungry, and like everything's shut down.
So a funny story that you say that because you know my vice president of construction, Paul Allen, and so. We are the contractor selected to build the plant for Brightline. It's called Rail 1 for the concrete railroad ties for the high-speed train that's going to go to California. And so they needed us to go see this plant in Iowa, just on the other side of Chicago. So Paul and I flew into Chicago, and it's like 7:15 we cross over the Iowa border, and Paul's from Wisconsin. He's like, wow, it's almost 8 o'clock, man. We better pull over and find a place to eat, or we're going to be eating out of a vending machine at the hotel. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not even 8 o'clock yet. And he goes, oh no, the sidewalks roll up. And sure enough, we got off on a Walmart exit, and there was a Mexican restaurant there, and it was like 5 minutes before 8, and they're turning the chairs upside down and mopping, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I will tell you, in the beginning, I had no wife, no kids, no dogs when I started NDL, so I would work crazy hours, and I was still working at commercial. So there would be mornings I would wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning because restless, couldn't sleep. And I'd wake up and I would literally get dressed. I would go to Blueberry Hill at 4:30 in the morning at Decatur and Charleston, and then I would literally just go into the office, and that's not going to happen anywhere else. So I think that whether you're a night owl or not, once you get used to a 24-hour town, it is very hard to not have a 24-hour town.
Yeah, we had a crappy layover. A client of mine booked my flight to Pittsburgh, and normally I just fly direct there, but we had a layover. Weather was crappy. We got in kind of late, like 8 o'clock when we landed, and everything in the airport was like shut down for food. And then we were driving. I was like, okay, well, there's gonna be like a McDonald's open like by the hotel, like for sure, because like 9:30. Nope, McDonald's closed. And I was like, McDonald's? I didn't even know they closed. Like first off, and then there was one other time I was in Kentucky, and we drove by like a gym, and my client was like, "Is that the gym that's open 24 hours?" I was like, "Aren't all gyms? It's like the big ones, aren't they all 24? Like gyms don't close." Grocery stores don't close. What do you mean we have to wait till the grocery store opens? Like they close? It's so crazy. But like going back to like the projects and stuff that you've worked on, is there like a project that just stands out as like the one that you're most proud of, the one that was like maybe the most rewarding to work on?
There's too many of them. I mean, look, I'm a car guy, so I really like the Shelby story. It was a cabinet company, Merlot. We turned it into Shelby, getting to build all the paint booths, the lights, put in all the lifts for the cars. That was great, right? Probably the most like challenging and rewarding is we built probably 80% of all of the Mountain's Edge shopping centers. So all those pads, all that coordination, even the other general contractors that built some of the pad buildings. But we built all the end lines. We built the Albertsons gas station. We just a ton of it. But the underground horizontal part of that was interesting. So the project was started by another contractor, then it went dormant when 2008 happened. Years later, it got picked up by another developer. Since then, they redid Blue Diamond Road. So now Blue Diamond Road was higher than what that was before. All of a sudden, they're building all those homes there, so now the water. So we had to use like these special water turbines. We had to go ahead and raise all the pads and the height. It was just a crazy undertaking to bring that project back, right? Because so many things had changed while it was down and out for 4 or 5 years. So, I think that was probably a pretty rewarding, and we learned a lot from it. But, we've done we've done all kinds of crazy hospitals, ambulatory centers. We've done, work inside the casinos. We've done, the drywall plant. We built all kinds of crazy stuff. So I think all of it's rewarding. But yeah, off the top of my head, I would think Shelby and Mountain's Edge kind of comes to mind just because of all of the fast pace, the hurdles, and, there were good projects.
That's cool. What do you feel like is your fuel? Like, what fuels you to be an entrepreneur, right? It's not easy. I think a lot of people give up. It gets pretty hard at times. It might feel like lonely in the journey. It's sometimes like, what is your feel like? What initially pushed you into it, and what keeps you going?
For anybody that's probably known me my whole life watching this would probably tell you in the beginning, for sure, it was probably the money that drove Nathan, right? What's funny is I think once you get to some part that you're making it, you have some money, you're not drowning in debt, you're not worried that somebody's coming to take your work truck. That's a good question. I mean, I would like to think that maybe some of it's leaving a legacy for my son if he wants to get into the business. But it's the people. I mean, truthfully, I've grown so much as a person. You learn from other entrepreneurs. You learn from other business people. The cool thing about being a general contractor is if you hit it big time and wanted to build a huge TV station, right? I would have to learn how to do that. So I'd have to build your green screen. We'd have to have backup generators, right? So I like all of the research. I think that because we're not your suitcase contractor, your typical contractor, we draw a lot of plans, we do a lot of entitlements, we do a lot of development, and we self-perform a lot of work. So having to wrap your head around, things like backup generators and, difficult problems and going to the county asking for parking reductions, or can we change the zoning of this building to make this idea work? That's kind of what I like now. Is I like the ideas. I like hearing the stories. You come in and tell me what you want me to build, and I've got to kind of put myself in your shoes, wrap my head around it, give some ideas. And we're doing that with either architects. A lot of the times we partner up. I tell people all the time, and I'm starting to hear it a lot now in like BOMA, IREM, NAIP, like all of these groups that we're involved in. People should really consider hiring the general contractor when they hire the architect. Now, like for us, we do in-house drawings and stuff, but but most of our work is all done with architects ground up. And every time we've been brought into the table at the beginning, it seems to turn out to be a better project. I think for the long time it was it was torn. The architect, he's not going to be told how to build something by a dumb general contractor, and the general contractor thinks that guy just cuts and pastes drawings, right? So I think that we've really evolved, and I think that when you put together a good design team, you eliminate like change orders, down times, starts, stops, waiting for answers to be done. So again, that all just drives me. I like the way we are evolving and things are getting more technical. AutoCAD used to be the thing. We now are getting into BIM, right? And what ends up happening with that is now you've got your architectural, you have your structural, you have your electrical, mechanical, plumbing drawings. Now all of a sudden, if you've got an electrical line running next to something and it can't go by, or you've got electrical lines going through an elevator shaft, BIM picks it up and kind of tells you like there's not continuity there, right? So the technology of our side is just getting better and better.
That's awesome. If you were talking to like a hopeful entrepreneur, maybe a newer entrepreneur, or like your son was like, hey, I want to go start a business, what do you think is the number one piece of advice you would give that person?
Make sure that you've got a support group probably around you. Get some advice from people that have done it before. And when I mean advice, I don't mean like lawyers, accountants, not that they're all great, but find somebody to probably mentor you. I would think that in the last 10 years, my growth has all been because of two really good mentors. I don't know that I could pay for that education in Harvard or USC or whatever. I mean, truthfully, when you are either lucky enough to find an entrepreneur or you go to the right person that runs a decent business, right? I think, and it's not shortcuts. They're not shortcuts at all. All of their mistakes and all of their bruised knees are going to take away a lot of that from you. I think as a businessman have grown tremendously because of two entrepreneurs that have really decided to step up and mentor me. But you also have to learn to listen. You have to also, I don't agree with everything. There's a lot of things they've told me, you should go ahead and do this. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. And maybe our businesses aren't the exact. These aren't guys that are general contractors, right? They were, one's a large apartment owner and another one was a mechanical contractor, an electrical contractor. So, mentorship. Don't think that you can sit in an office, start at homegrown in your house, not communicate, not have mentors or groups or whatever. Education is great. Don't get me wrong. I personally didn't go to college, but education, that's fine. Learning the basics of accounting, the basics of all of that stuff, I won't take it away from anybody. But what you learn in school and what's really done in the workplace is two different things, right? And it's always changing. So I would just say if you're looking to get into business, you have to have drive, you have to have discipline, surround yourself with good people, and try to find a mentor that's willing to help you out with the basics.
And then I know that you operate in a few different states.
Yes.
Is there anything that stands out about doing work in Vegas and building a business here versus these other states? Is it easier? Is it harder? Is there, I'm sure there's probably so many variables with what you do.
Yeah, it's funny. Look, I heard my old employer at Commercial Roofers, Scott used to joke that there was a force field around Vegas, that other roofing companies for years have tried to come here from California, from Arizona. They really never stuck. A couple of guys from California came here, and they're still here to this day. But Vegas is a very fast pace, right? And Vegas is a very big town. I think we're over 2 million people now, but it's still like a very small town, right? So what I like about Vegas myself is it's super fast paced. You have to, again, bring yourself with the right subs. You have to know how to resolve problems within the municipalities. You have to know who to go to. Here, you can't sit and wait. It's not going to get done itself, right? Doing business in the other two states, I think it's not as fast paced. I wouldn't say that it's really any easier, but it's definitely not as fast paced. If I'm doing something here and you tell me that you got to be open in a month and I can't find an air conditioner, I can't tell you how many times I've stuck a guy in a truck and sent them somewhere. We actually had a job when right after COVID, all these factories stopped. So starting back up was difficult. We had a job and we got a phone call that actually said our 20-something air conditioners were just about to go from Mexico over to Houston from Carrier because they were assembled in Mexico, and that they couldn't get a truck or whatever. I literally sent a truck and a trailer. Those guys, I had a two-man crew. They drove all the way to Houston. They picked it up literally from the warehouse there, and we drove it back, and we saved ourselves 2.5 weeks. So Vegas doesn't wait. It's not uncommon to go to my family in Missouri, and I'll be like, they're still building that gas station? It's been 13 months. We'd have that thing done in 6 months. So it's just very fast-paced here.
That's cool. I think one thing that scares entrepreneurs sometimes, especially when they're newer, is competition, right? There's a fear of, let's just say, for example, in my industry, I'm in this group of studio owners, and I can these studio owners are scared because they're there's so many studios popping up in my area. How am I going to compete? And then I assume in the world of contracting, I know you guys have a special license that you were talking about earlier, but in contracting, there's probably new contractors popping up every single day. There's people that are underbidding. There's people that are, there's probably so many options out there. Does that scare you at all? Does that hold you back? How do you stand your ground? How do you not worry about that?
So I guess in kind of a very weird, long-winded answer. So here's the thing. I do believe that you can go to college, but I almost, you hear all the time that most entrepreneurs are kind of born that way, right? I mean, you hear it a million times. So, and there may be a little truth to it. What I think is key is you've got to be different. I don't care you're selling tennis shoes. I don't care what it is you're selling, what your business is. You have to stand out from your competition, right? So how you deliver a bid maybe, how you go ahead and your proposal reads, right? How you deliver that proposal. For us, we self-perform, right? We have some special licenses, like because I was in the roofing industry, I don't have a roofing license, but I have a foam and coating license. We have 3 foam trucks and we spray millions and millions of dollars a year in foam and coatings, right? So of course, almost every flat roof that we do, we try to do it in foam and coating, and we keep things in-house. But we do drawings in-house, we do design and development in-house, we do entitlements in-house, we have a legal team in-house, we have a CPA in-house. We've done things differently. I also believe in branding. Stand out, right? You've got a brand. The problem in Nevada, I hear, and like Arizona, is the way you see all of these attorneys with the car accidents. Everybody's suing everybody, right? Well, that's become a big problem in our industry. A lot of my competition, a lot of my competitors no longer drive trucks that are wrapped that say their company name, because they get one little hit and the next thing you know, they're getting sued for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 or whatever, right? And that is unfortunate. I mean, I think that's something that's a political government issue. The government needs to step in and fix that for sure, whether it's state, federal level. But I'm old school that way. You'll see driving around, we have 38 trucks, I think, something like that, 36 or 38 trucks. They're all wrapped. They have our name plastered everywhere. I get every once in a while, I'll get a Google thing that says truck number 9 or whatever was driving bad. Hey, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate it. I mean, it is what it is. But branding, stand out. If you want, example, our buddy, good friend of mine, a client of yours, Paul Salick. Everybody who's ever met Paul Salick loves the guy. You cannot love Paul. Paul stands out. Paul is very Paul. But if you look at the way he's branded that company, you look at what he's done, it's unbelievable. And I'm going to tell you the thing that Paul does. I'm going to rat him out here right online. And you've gotten him before. Paul, as big as he's gotten, he's still very much a people person. How many thank you cards have you gotten from Paul Salick? Because I've gotten a ton over the years, right? That guy, I'll be flying with him somewhere, and he's got a box, and he's writing thank you cards, okay? Do you know how many people I know that do business with Paul that are like, dude, I'll do that. I'll do business with that guy forever. That guy still gives me a damn thank you card. Every time I buy a plane or I do something with them, I get a thank you card. Stand out. I mean, you're talking about a $3 thank you card. That guy's probably, and you and I both know, probably sent out tens of thousands of those thank you cards. People love him for it. Stand out. That's my thing. Do what your competition isn't doing, and you'll be successful. Return that phone call. One last thing, advice I'll give you, your grandparents growing up or your dad, they always say these things, right? And you're like, oh, yeah, right. You got to be kidding me. When I got into business, my grandfather said, hey, I'm going to give you a word of advice. And he was a president of a mining company. And he gave me 2 big pieces of advice that I use this day. But the first one, he said, always return the phone calls that you don't want to return. Return those first. And then the people you want to talk to them last. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm like, this old man's off his rocker, right? Whatever. All of a sudden, you do that and you figure out, okay, deal with the bad first, and then by the time you're talking to your buddy at the end, it leaves you in a much better mindset, right? So you may get, worked up, then all of a sudden you're calling your buddy or somebody you like to work with, and then you're calmed down. And the other thing he told me was, in business, he's like, whenever you interview somebody, always walk them out to their car. And I'm like, why? He's like, because if their car is an absolute mess, that's probably what their office is going to look like. So, you over the years, you hear these things from, mentors, your family members or whatever. That's what it is. Stand out and take that advice, because you'll laugh. You may think it's worthless advice in the beginning, but it's funny how years later it plays out.
No, I love that. I mean, when you bring up a Paul, right, the first thing I do is just get a smile on my face. I'm like, dude, he's such a good dude. Anytime you see him, he sees you, right? And it's funny. It's like we talk about this a lot in the studio. Like when we give advice to our clients, like I hate the word content. Like we're not here to help you create content. We're here to help you build relationships. That might be virtually through the content you're creating, or bringing people in and having those conversations, building relationship. But like you have to remember, like you're talking to people. People have problems, right? And you have the solution to that problem. And if you don't speak up, if you don't voice, your expertise and address these problems that they have, like you're doing such a disservice to people out there. And the more that you give, the more that you can show, like, I care about you, I see you, I hear you, I understand that your problems are like this, I get it, I've been there, we've worked with people like that, the more trust that they're going to have in you and the easier to do business with them. But I think that often gets lost in the day-to-day for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, I think, earlier on, because you're wearing so many hats. And I don't think it ever gets easier, right? No. I would say, like, my day probably feels hectic, but compared to your day, it probably looks like nothing with all the fires you're probably constantly putting out. So the hecticness never changes. And sometimes we might lose sight of putting people first. And if you don't put people first in business, I think you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, people buy or people do business with whom they like, right? So again, Paul Salick, I've yet to ever hear anybody say, I don't like that guy rubbed me the wrong way. I've never heard it, and I've known him going on 16 years or something, 17 years. So, yeah, people buy from whom they like. Do what you say you're going to do. Live by it, die by it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're paid to do something. Do it. Is it going to get screwed up? Sure. But just work it out. I mean, we're just, sometimes I tell people, hey, do you want me to go tell that customer we screwed that up? I'm like, yeah, go tell them it's screwed up. Tell them we apologize. Tell them we're going to make it right. And if they want to talk to me, give them my cell number and have them talk to me. And I do that all of the time. We're not perfect. Construction, my business is problematic. Right? I mean, we can point fingers at the architect, the existing conditions, like whatever. But at the end of the day, if it's screwed up, it's got to get addressed. It's got to get fixed.
I think that's such a good takeaway, and we'll probably end around here, is I feel like oftentimes people are so scared to address the fact that they made that mistake. But if you could just communicate, right? Like people are, for the most part, understanding. It might suck. You might have to maybe do some things to make up, or you might even have to give some money back, but you take care of people, and that's going to mean so much more than like trying to brush it under and hope you can get by with them not noticing or what. Like, I think it speaks to your character, and people are more willing to refer to people to you, work with you again, because like when I do testimonials for businesses, one thing early on, businesses are always like, oh, cut that part out because they said that this went wrong in that process. Like there's a software company I do videos for. And I tell them, I was like, yeah, but did you hear what he said right after? Yes, there was this hiccup, but your support system was so great that within 24 hours, everything was taken care of. And they called you guys at 9 p.m. at night and your team took care of it. I was like,
that's what I want to hear.
The power of that, like we don't need it to be like everything was perfect, because like, look, if you're changing softwares in a pharmacy, something's probably going to go wrong. Like that, and that's a scary thing. So to hear, hey, things went wrong, but they handled it so well is so important. So I think it's okay to be more real and show that things go wrong, and then just deal with it in the best way possible.
Yeah, I mean, and to end on that note, I'll just add to this, right? In my business, and I'm sure probably in any business, it's easier to go ahead and maintain and keep that relationship. And literally, I will tell you that one of the biggest successes of NDL is I can truthfully say that more than 60% of our business has been repeat year after year after year. Look, I built Paul's building. He didn't build out the second. 2 years later, Paul calls me. We do almost another $1 million at it, the elevator, and built up the second floor. Then all of a sudden, he buys out his partner. Now all of a sudden, I'm doing all kinds of work in Henderson. He keeps calling and calling and calling, right? Was it perfect? Did we have problems when we built out there at the Henderson airport? Sure, because you not have just Henderson. We had to have the Department of Aviation. So everything was double-checked, double-scrutinized, and it was a tough project. But we took care of it, and Paul has spent millions and millions of dollars year after year after year with me. And that's what it is. Own up to it. Make it right. It is always better to just be honest, do what you say you can do, and maintain. If you had to literally go out and every single time find a new person to video or a new person to do this because you know that you couldn't go back, you burned all those bridges, you're not going to be living in Vegas. You're done. There's going to be no more work here. So yeah, it's not perfect. Unfortunately, sometimes things go bad. Sometimes they can't be saved, but do what you can to save it and just be honest.
I love it. I appreciate it, man. I know you're busy. Thank you so much for coming in. Where can people find out more information about the NDL Group?
Look, we have a website. It's not too fancy. We recently just redid it, but www.ndlgroupinc.com. So ndlgroupinc.com. And there's testimonials, there's videos, locations that we have throughout the 3 states, and that's where they can find us.
Welcome to Built in Vegas, the podcast where we spotlight the stories, strategies, and resources behind the businesses that make Vegas thrive. Whether you're starting up or scaling up, you're in the right place. Brought to you by the Video Podcast Studio.